Exclusive interview, industry news, environmental innovation at thecrudelife.com.
Good day, listeners, friends. Today we get to speak with the awesome Governor Doug Burgum from North Dakota. Very excited to get to talk with him today. And we don't have too much time because he is very busy, so we're going to go ahead and jump right in. And let's hear about the energy industry in North Dakota as it is right now. I know there's been lots and lots of changes. You've been putting forth executive orders. What have you been going through for the last month?
Well, Genneca, first of all, great to be with you, and thanks for all the great work that you do on reporting on such an important industry. And as you know, you and your listeners have been following, but we started out back in January with President Biden coming in and indicating through his inauguration address that he was wanting to talk about unity. And then what did we get the first couple of weeks was we have more executive orders than any president in history, more than double the Obama administration, including some that had a direct impact on things that are important to all of us, including American energy security. So it's been an interesting last month for sure. And then you throw on top of that everything that's happening right now across the power grid in the United States. Certainly a lot of challenges and a lot of headwinds for the energy industry, and we're doing everything we can in North Dakota to fight back against that and make sure that we're fighting for American jobs, American manufacturing, for appropriately priced gas at the tank to help hardworking American families, and everything we can to help keep our economy strong and our country strong.
Oh, absolutely. And so with these executive orders, it actually appeared to me, correct me if I'm wrong, but it appeared to me that North Dakota was actually the first state to adopt kind of a way to bypass orders that had been found to be unconstitutional or to have a detrimental impact on the economy.
Well, there's been multiple things going. Our office right away, we issued an executive order from our office instructing all of the agencies in the state of North Dakota to start evaluating the impact of the Biden federal rule changes and executive orders, and so we can really understand what that's going to mean in terms of jobs and American energy security. And then secondarily, I think what you're referring to is there has been a proposal in our legislature that's working its way through, but that has not yet been passed or reached my desk yet.
Well, actually, I would be curious to hear more about that. I was talking about the executive order that you had put out on February 2nd or 3rd, directing the agencies to look into the executive orders from the Biden administration. Was what I had actually been referring to, but what legislation were you just noting, if I might ask?
Well, there's a. We'll see if it makes it through both chambers, but there was some discussion among legislators about trying to introduce legislation that would allow the state to be able to reject some federal rules, and again, I think there'll be a healthy debate about that. But I think other states are looking at that as well. But it'll come down to the fundamental decision and philosophy about states' rights versus the federal government. And here in North Dakota, we understand that the states created the federal government, not the other way around. And we think that there's states that should have the opportunity to regulate their industries. And no one's going to care more about the clean air and clean water in our state than the people that live here. And so we'll continue always to be fighting for states' rights relative to federal rules, because most of the federal, one-size-fits-all rules just don't work, including, one of the executive orders was a ban on issuing additional permits on federal land. And of course, I'm sure there may be some people that think something like that is, going to be saving a swath of, pristine, untouched Arctic land where nobody, sets foot. But the fact in North Dakota, the federal land is scattered, and in a traditional 2-section spacing unit. So you might have 1,280 acres in a spacing unit in North Dakota. If you had 10 acres of federal land in there, they could potentially block additional development on that. And, we know for North Dakota that represents tens of thousands of jobs and hundreds of millions of dollars of tax revenue. And that tax revenue, of course, goes to pay for roads and schools and hospitals and all the things that that we all essential infrastructure that we need in our state. So, we're going to make sure that we're fighting hard against federal overreach in cases like this, where it has an impact on private mineral owners, private landowners, and communities in the state.
Well, and that'll be a really interesting discussion to hear. I was actually wondering if there might be anything coming about. So just to make sure, just to clarify, make sure I have this right, essentially what you're waiting to see, what the conversation that's waiting to come is not specifically about the executive orders, but federal overreach in general and the sovereignty of the state itself, yeah?
Well, both of those things. I mean, I think the general category is the federal overreach, but specifically, we're going to be examining each of the federal executive orders from the Biden administration and trying to assess the impact of each of them, so we can be, articulate and precise and help educate the administration about the perhaps the unintended effects of some of these orders. Because if they're all couched under the idea that somehow shutting down the American energy industry is going to help emissions, that's also a policy that doesn't work, because nobody produces energy cleaner and more efficiently than the American energy industry. And so if we are shutting down, whether it's base load electric production or oil and gas in our country, we're just pushing. It's not going to reduce the demand for energy in our country. It just pushes those sources offshore to foreign sources who wouldn't be producing that energy as cleanly as we are. And we've been fighting really since World War II as a country to achieve energy independence and energy security, and we finally achieved that under the previous White House administration. And when we achieved that under President Trump, and we finally were in a position for the first time in my lifetime where we could sell energy to our friends and allies versus buy it from our enemies, which, again, creates incredible energy security and geopolitical security for our country, and saves the lives of soldiers that we've been sending to the Middle East for the last 30 or 40 years. We finally get to that point, and then in the first weeks of the Biden administration, we reverse that course and start putting out executive orders, things that haven't even been vetted through, Congress or having hearings, just executive orders to start, shutting down our energy industry here. And again, this is not only bad for the economy and bad for the U.S. in terms of our own national security. It's also bad for emissions, because pushing those energy production to foreign sources and then having to ship that energy to the United States is bad for global emissions. So I don't see any element of this that makes sense on any agenda if you actually look at the facts.
Right. Well, and a lot of it really has changed and come to a standstill too. The Keystone XL pipeline, that's still at a standstill. Am I correct?
Well, yes, this is another thing which I think should be chilling to all Americans in every industry, not just the energy industry, but the attack against legally permitted infrastructure is going to make it very difficult to raise capital. I mean, imagine if you're on Wall Street and you're raising bonds to build infrastructure, or you're a company and you're trying to sell stock to investors because you got a plan on how you're going to build out essential infrastructure. And then in your risk disclosures, you have to say, well, these are the risks that we know that we face. We've overcome all of those. We've got a project, say like the Dakota Access Pipeline, that's up and running and operating safely and among the most technologically advanced pipelines in the country. And then you have the opportunity to face, action from an administration that could shut it down after it's actually up and running. I mean, I don't know how we, aggregate and put capital together for future infrastructure projects of any kind. And maybe today it's a pipeline, but tomorrow maybe somebody decides they don't want a road or a railroad or an airport, and then they end up blocking it after the thing is actually up and running. And so whether it's Keystone or Dakota Access, I think, again, the ideological interference with legally permitted infrastructure projects is, again, that's scary for the future of our country, well beyond even just the energy industry.
Oh, absolutely. I'm sure there are many, many people that would, of course, agree with that. I know that you'd mentioned it towards the beginning, too, with the recent weather and climate changes. Do you think that that's kind of highlighted any of the reasons for needing to keep our energy industry strong? Why we might need to look into, re-look into the reopening of the Keystone XL pipeline. Maybe have other states look into what you've been doing to make sure that the Dakota Access Pipeline stays open. I'm sure there's many people happy, thankful for that. Do you think that there might be changes based on what has been going on this last week?
Well, I certainly think that what's happened in the last week and what's happening yet today is a wake-up call for our country. If you are going to have, political interference in markets, like we've seen with the subsidies that have been given to intermittent energy sources versus the attack and the additional costs and regulations put on what would be considered the base load, what we need for times like this, the base load electrical power that's sustainable and dispatchable and predictable in all weather conditions. We've really got a set of policies which is set us up. I mean, as the wealthiest, strongest economy in the world, and then we've got an electrical grid that has got instability due to weather because of ideological policy. And it just doesn't make sense when we're spending tens of billions of dollars to subsidize intermittent energy, and then the federal government is putting almost $0 into the research that would help solve the carbon issues. And we believe in North Dakota in innovation, not regulation. And if you're trying to regulate industries like the baseload power industry, if you're trying to regulate that out of business, thinking that you're going to do that to save emissions, what you're actually doing is, putting at risk Americans during times like this. And then we're also not solving an emissions problem because, we've got China and India have between them close to 1 billion people that don't have electricity. They're going to continue to build plants with older technology there. They're going to generate more emissions there than what we're shutting down in the U.S. And so we've actually gained nothing on the emissions front, where if we were investing in the R&D, and we're very close with carbon sequestration, the ability to take carbon right now I think, every school kid thinks that carbon is the devil element on the periodic table, when carbon is a key component of life. We know that carbon can be used in advanced material science. We know that carbon, if a pure stream of it's pumped into a greenhouse, that plants can grow 30% or more faster. And so if we want to feed the world and solve the carbon problem, what we really need is innovation. And in North Dakota, we're investing in private-public partnerships around these ideas, around carbon into greenhouses. We're investing in one of the largest carbon sequestration projects in the country. There's another one announced yesterday related to that. And so there is a lot of opportunity for us to solve emissions problems through innovation. Regulation actually doesn't solve the problem. It just will raise the cost of electricity for Americans. That'll force manufacturing jobs back overseas again. And it's like a hidden tax on every American. And then we also end up with, grid instability that we have right now. And so again, there's a path forward to a future, but it's going to involve innovation, not regulation.
How very exciting. That's some really interesting things to think of for uses for carbon. I know last week when I had the opportunity to speak with Governor Mark Gordon, he also mentioned, needing to be more innovative along the lines of what to do with the carbon capturing and utilizing the carbon that has been captured. I found that to be absolutely fascinating. So it kind of sounds like that's the direction that North Dakota is going to be taking it to, kind of utilizing the technology that's already in place to make things more streamlined. Is that kind of what I'm hearing?
Well, absolutely. And Mark Gordon's doing a great job in Wyoming. So always shout out to Mark. But I want to say here with our Energy and Environmental Research Center at the University of North Dakota and the private-public partnerships we're doing through one project called Project Tundra, we've actually got the largest scale carbon sequestration program in the country. We've already got pipelines where we're exporting carbon from North Dakota up to Canada that they use in enhanced oil recovery up there in Alberta and their oil fields. And so we're well on our way. But again, the federal government's sitting on the sidelines right now on this. And like I said, they're spending tens of billions of dollars providing tax breaks for intermittent power sources, which are part of the issue we have with this grid instability, and they're spending almost nothing supporting the innovation around how do we actually come up with solutions for a carbon constrained future, and how do we turn carbon into a value added input versus this the disparagement that it's getting right now.
So, okay, so how do you think would be best then to move forward? Do you think that it's going to take more legal action to bring the federal government on board with the new innovations rather than fighting the energy industry? Or do you think it's going to be more of needing to educate the public further on what is actually happening in the energy industry? Because there's a lot of people that don't even realize how effective the United States in general is at capturing carbon.
Well, I think it's all of the above, Genneca. I think we have to continue to, the industry and government and different associations, everybody's got to continue to educate people so we've got a broader understanding. But we also, again, have to, at the state level and working with our congressional delegation, we got to continue to push back on federal policy, which is not really driven really more by ideology than it's driven by the practical solutions we need to move forward in the decades ahead. And so I think it's going to be take both of those things, both education and firm political action.
Yeah, it definitely doesn't sound like a terribly easy road ahead. Lots of things that could potentially go one way or another. Out of curiosity, I know that I'd seen that there were 13 or 14 different states now that were looking at banding together against the implementation of these executive orders that have been so detrimental already to the energy industry. Do you see any options or a chance of any kind of a class action suit against President Biden at this time, or do you think that's kind of just not really on the table yet? What is the temperature, do you think?
Well, I think that because the impacts are so severe, both on states and on jobs and on the private sector and on communities, that you are going to see action. I know that the attorney generals from multiple states are in conversation with each other, exploring different avenues. I know that certainly the governors, I've talked to at least a dozen other governors myself in the last few weeks that have also been, dealing with these situations and are willing to work together and to collaborate to try to figure out a way to navigate and push back where we can. And so again, I think we'll continue to see the some progress, I think, from the standpoint of the states really getting aligned under these new threats, which are endangering American energy security, and they're endangering the jobs in our states, and they're also impacting all of the, again, the hardworking Americans that have to get in their car and commute every day. So we got a lot of positive things we can keep fighting for, and I'm confident that we're going to represent our states well in this battle.
Sounds like this is going to remain a very big and important issue, something that everyone should probably be keeping an eye on. I do not envy your position, but I'm glad that there's some good leadership. It's wonderful to see good leadership, and it's wonderful to see leadership from the different states banding together. Is there anything that you would like to add that you think would be important or pertinent that people should hear about or know?
No, I think we've covered it all, Genneca. And again, thanks for having us on the podcast, and I hope you and your family are all well.
Oh, absolutely. And same to you. Thank you so much, Governor Burgum. I really appreciate the time you spent. Have a great rest of your day.
Okay, you too.
Good luck.
Take care, Genneca. Thank you. Bye.
All right, friends and listeners, that was Governor Doug Burgum from North Dakota talking about federal overreach, fighting back against executive orders, positivity looking forward, and in general, just keeping that energy industry strong. Going to need to continue looking to see for new developments and updates, but if you liked what you heard, make sure to go and check out the rest of what the Crude Life has to offer.